This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. A review of Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas this week. Also, staff writer Richard Simm with Cruise News. And diving deep into a story that hit the news a couple of weeks ago about a cruise passenger who got sick on a cruise and is fighting with her travel insurance company. President of tripinsurance.com, Dan Skilkin, will be joining us as well. But first, cruise news with Richard. Hey, man.
Hey, Doug.
We start with an update about a cruiser who went missing during an Alaska port stop.
And sadly, this is a story with a tragic ending. Last week, a 62-year-old woman named, and forgive me to her friends and family if I mispronounce this, but her name is Maritas Buenafe. She was from Kentucky, and she was sailing on the Norwegian Bliss. When they arrived in Juneau, she disembarked, told her family members she was going to go for a hike, as do a lot of people visiting that particular area. It's a gorgeous area to go hiking in. Unfortunately, she did not make it back to the ship. And authorities began a search once they were notified. The ship did have to, move on. Several days later, her body was located when an Alaska National Guard helicopter crew spotted her at the bottom of Mount Roberts. It appears she probably slipped and fell to her death, although an autopsy is being conducted to just confirm that, wrap up the details. It's a great reminder that whether you're on a cruise or on land, when you're going somewhere, and especially somewhere that, there is potential danger, make sure people know that you are with that, where you're going and when. And if possible, go with other people. It's great to be on your own. I'm a solo traveler. I love being on my own, but I also understand that if I'm going somewhere risky, I tend to try and find someone to tag along with so that you're not out there on your own. I know you do the same thing because you are also a solo traveler sometimes, and it's important. It's important that people know where you are, and for exactly this type of reason.
It's worth noting, too, Richard, because a lot of people don't know about this. But for instance, I've been hiking all over the West, and I have one of those Garmin GPS trackers where I could text anyone anywhere, whether I have service or not. But also it sends a ping to me every few minutes. So whoever I share my location with, they know exactly where I am at all time. And I'm not trying to sound insensitive, but it's things that we need to think about before we take these adventures by ourselves.
Well, and it's also stuff that we don't want to think about. You're going on vacation. You don't want to think about the fact that you might have something bad happen. But everything you can do to prepare, it's worth doing.
A Norwegian cruise line just canceled 41 sailings in order to switch things up where two of their ships are concerned.
When Norwegian first announced the cancellations, they would only say it was due to fleet deployment. Now we know it's basically sort of a ship swap. Try saying that 3 times really fast. Actually, don't, or we might have to censor it out because it's very difficult to say. Before we tell you which ship is going where, let me start by saying that this impacts sailings between November of 2026 and March of 2027. So unless you are booked on a Norwegian cruise that far in advance, this probably isn't going to impact you, but it is going to impact people who are. So let's discuss it a little bit. Here's the deal. Norwegian Breakaway was originally slated to spend that time period sailing out of San Juan, and Norwegian Prima was going to spend those months sailing out of New Orleans. The company has decided that instead they want to have the bigger ship sailing out of New Orleans. I guess there's enough demand that they think that that's where the bigger ship of the two should be. One thing that's interesting to me is that while cruisers will get a full refund as well as a 10% future cruise credit, they will not have their reservation automatically transferred from one ship to another. That struck me as a little odd because in most cases in which one ship is swapped out for another or a cruise is canceled and they're like, let us get you on another ship, they basically say, we will automatically switch you from, the cabin you're in to a similar cabin on the other ship. If you don't want that, let us know and we'll cancel. That's fine. but we're going to do this to make it easier for you. I sort of assume that the reason they're not doing it here is that the Breakaway is not only a bigger ship, but it's also older, which means Prima is more in demand and can probably bring in a higher price. So while you are getting a full refund, let's say you were on the Breakaway and now you're considering moving over to the Prima, you're getting your money back from Breakaway, but the booking price for Prima is probably going to be higher because they are not guaranteeing that, like, if you move from a balcony to a balcony, that you'll get the same price. They're completely ignoring that question entirely. In any case, if this impacts you, you're probably already aware as the line is sending out notices to travel partners and guests. But if you are a fan, or I guess a detractor, of either of these two ships, again, it's the Breakaway and the Prima, and are looking at sailing in 26 or in that period between November and March, 26 to 27, it's worth making sure you know which ship is going to be in which port so that if you want to sail on Prima, you can sail from the port that it's actually sailing out of.
One of our listeners was on the first redeployment, and so they booked this second one out of San Juan. Now this one has been canceled, so he was like, I hope bad things don't come in 3 here.
So basically, he's the version of you when it comes to airplanes. Because I've always said I will never travel with you because if you're on a plane, it is going to get canceled or it's going to be delayed or something is going to happen.
And a French politician allegedly made a spectacle of himself by attempting to illegally board a cruise ship in the harbor.
So you're probably too young to remember this, but on the old TV show, The Love Boat, every episode would start with not only passengers embarking, but people who'd come to see them off. Like, friends and relatives would come on board and they'd hang out on the ship for a little while. And that there would be an announcement saying something along the lines of all ashore that's going ashore, and guests would leave. And that wasn't just on television. That was actually like in real life. You could go on the boat and say goodbye to people back then. It's a lot more difficult now to get on a cruise ship. You really have to, jump through some hoops. In fact, if you want to get off a cruise ship prematurely, you also sort of have to jump through some hoops. In any case, in this case, the mayor of Nice over in France, Christian Estrosi, found out the hard way that you can't just approach a ship and get on. The ship was docked. No, it was not docked. I'm sorry. It was at anchor, and he climbed on a police boat and took his little boat out there and wanted to get on board because he was going to go tell the captain, you can't be here. Now, if you've been following around the world, I should say, I'm sorry, there have been various ports that are sort of protesting the arrival of big ships. They are setting limits on how many ships can come each day or how many people, when a ship arrives, can be on that ship. And we're seeing this in France. Now, it's really important to note here that the ship in question was perfectly legal. It was the Royal Caribbean Voyager of the Seas. They'd done everything right. They were permitted to be there. They were in the group of ships that are under grandfathered in under this clause. But the mayor was not happy and wanted to go out there. And he basically, when he was denied boarding, he kind of started yelling at the ship, you can't be here. Now, if you're wondering why he did that, because standing on a police boat outside another much bigger ship and yelling at it seems kind of silly. But the reason he did this becomes clearer when you realize that he had a TV crew with him, and that when he got back to shore, he happily did interviews with anyone who wanted to talk to him about the situation, because he is very, very much against having these large cruise ships come to the area over which he is mayor, and he's also president of sort of a group of communities there. And so he really was pretty clearly trying to make this a big deal so that he could get press coverage out of it, which he certainly did. I mean, we're talking about it, aren't we? But again, it's really important to note that the ship was there. It did have permission to be there. It had permission for its guests to disembark. CLIA, the Cruise Line International Association, which is an advocacy group for the cruise industry, was very unhappy about this happening and released a statement saying basically that what he did was the illegal action, and what he was attempting to do in boarding the ship to present the captain with his paperwork demanding they leave was the illegal action, not the ship being there itself. So, we're seeing more of this around the world, as I mentioned, but in this case, it was definitely a guy trying to get some attention to his cause.
A little bit of grandstanding by Mayor Estrosi.
100%.
Cruisers going to Mexico officially paying more as of July 1.
Yeah, but they might not even be aware of it, to be truth be told. I just booked a trip that is going to be stopping in Mexico, and I was none the more aware that this was happening. But as we've been discussing for a while, Mexico has they originally had a very large price in mind that they wanted each passenger to pay, whether they got off the ship or not, when they arrived in Mexico. And over time, there was a negotiation, and they sort of agreed on a tax that is going to increase over the next few years. So right now, everybody is paying a $5 tax. It actually hasn't started. Yes, it has started now. I'm sorry. Starts now. Everybody is paying a $5 tax. On August 1st of next year, that's 2026, that tax will go up to $10 per person. On July 1st of 2027, it will go up to $15 a person. And on August 1st of 2028, it goes to $21. It's kind of weird. It goes like 5, 10, 15, 21, as if we get that one extra dollar. Mm-hmm. Now, supposedly, the 2028 increase to $21 is where it will be capped. That's, we're building to it slowly over the next few years, but that is where the line will be drawn. I don't know that I believe that because, there's a lot of time between now and 2028 in which that tax can be renegotiated, or they might say, okay, yeah, we're capping it for now, but in 2 years, we're raising it to 30 or whatever. The reason I say most people will not even be aware of it is that this will be paid, it'll be rolled into your cruise fare, basically. We look earlier this year, I think it was, the cruise lines all agreed that they were going to start doing their pricing in such a way that when you look at the price of the cruise, your taxes and fees, and that includes the fees being charged by ports, are included in your overall price. There are other things that aren't, obviously, but that is included in your overall price. So unless you are looking at a really specific breakdown of what you're paying, you're not even going to notice that you're paying, $5 now and $10 next year. It's just going to be included in your price. It is, however, worth noting that as this happens, it is going to significantly increase the price of a cruise, especially if you're cruising with a family or a group of people. $5 doesn't seem like a big deal, but let's say you're taking your extended family, you've booked 4 cabins, you've got, however many people with you, it's $5 per person. So that is going to add up. And more importantly, if you are going to more than one port that is increasing the fees, because we're seeing fees increased at various ports around the world, you could start to see that become fairly significant over time.
We should also just note, and just to be clear, that this is only happening if you're going to Cozumel and Costa Maya. It's only happening one time.
Right, exactly. If you're going to more than one port in Mexico, you only get charged once as opposed to having to pay it at each of those ports, which it's worth noting was the original proposition. They wanted this tax to be for every port that you visit in Mexico. So if you were on a cruise that paid a visit to both of those ports, you would pay twice. That is not going to be happening here, at least under the current provisions. It is just a one-time fee per your visit to Mexico.
And our last story here involves someone who did back-to-back cruises and had to cancel. And it involves travel insurance. So, Richard, we're going to say goodbye to you and bring in Dan Skilkin, president of tripinsurance.com, if I don't screw this up. So, bye, Richard.
Well, goodbye, except not really goodbye, because I definitely want to stick around and hear this. I like hearing cruise insurance stories, weirdly.
Fair enough. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Doug.
So, for some background context here, last fall, Carnival Panorama did a Trans-Pacific cruise. It left from Los Angeles, went to Japan. All the guests got off in Japan and kind of either flew home or toured around Asia. A lot of them, though, stayed in Asia. They flew down to Singapore when Carnival Panorama got out of dry dock and took the ship back to LA. So it's basically back-to-back cruises with a little time in between here. So to set it up, this is basically a family who decided to do a 72-day cruise. It was those 2 back-to-back sailings with some time in between. And they bought travel insurance through Carnival, through Aon, which is a provider that Carnival uses. Now, midway through their trip in Japan, the woman became seriously ill and had to become hospitalized for nearly 2 months, which had to obviously cancel the next cruise, the return leg from Singapore back to LA. So when they submitted their travel insurance claim, the insurance company denied most of it, saying that the coverage ended the moment they canceled the remainder of their cruise, even though the medical emergency is what caused them to cancel the cruise. I know it's a lot to unpack there, Dan. So I guess my question is, how can someone make sure that they're covered from start to finish? Because it seems like this policy sold by the cruise line wasn't the way to go, unfortunately, in her case.
Well, Doug, when you sent this over to me, I was concerned too, because here was an example of a customer that buys travel insurance and she says, I should be covered. I'm going to be gone for this long period of time. In fact, she said, knowing how long she was gone, she wanted to make sure she had coverage. And it appears she bought a commercial plan offered through the cruise company by Aon. And she even contacted one of the local news stations to try to help her, with their ombudsman approach to see if they could help get some resolution on this claim. From listening to what's going on, what may have happened was because she bought the travel insurance for the cruises, and it may in fact even been priced as 2 separate cruises, one from LA to Japan and the other one back from Singapore. If they were sold as 2 separate cruises, the dates of travel are critical here in terms of when her coverage starts and stops with regard to things like medical coverage or medical evac. So she would have been covered during the cruise for her medical. But when she landed in Japan, because she's not on the cruise anymore, they're not responsible for her medical coverage because her departure and her return date, in this particular case, the return date would be the date in Japan. So it's important to talk about when coverages begin and end. Every travel insurance plan, whether you buy it from the cruise company or you buy it from a third party, the initial coverage is for trip cancellation. That's from the day after you buy the plan until the day you depart. And that's for trip cancellation coverage, and you can see what the cancellation terms are within the plan. On the day of departure, a new set of coverages starts. The trip cancellation ends, and now you're on during the trip. And so you have trip interruption, you have travel medical evac, travel delay, misconnection, these sorts of things, baggage coverage. All of that begins on the day you start the cruise. So we always, when we're selling a plan, we always recommend people buy travel insurance door to door from your home on the outbound and back to your home on the return. So in this particular case, if she bought a plan that covered both cruises, which you can do, as well as all that travel time in between, she would have been covered for travel medical that entire period of time. But in this case, because she's buying the plan straight from the cruise company, a lot of times the cruise companies do not even allow you to increase the amount of time before the cruise or have any time after the cruise, like the time in between. They're not allowing you to insure those periods when you're not on the cruise ship itself, because that is a commercial plan that they're selling. So getting those dates of travel are absolutely critical. And the issue for these dates is that, as you can imagine, they're going to affect your travel medical, your medical evac, your hurricane coverage, as well as travel delays getting to the boat. So we've had a lot of times where people will go over to Europe or go to the Orient, to Japan. They'll go over early so they can enjoy the departure city in advance, and then they get on the cruise. And a lot of times they don't think about, even if they bought insurance from us, they don't think about, well, if my cruise departs on this date, that's when I'll start the insurance. Well, if they turn in a claim, the insurance company is going to look at this and say, your plan coverage for your departure didn't happen until the day the cruise departed. So all of those other special features, with the exception of cancellation, are not available until that departure date. So this is why getting getting door-to-door insurance is pretty critical. But we should also talk really briefly, Doug, about a commercial versus a retail plan. Commercial plans are specifically written for the cruise company to sell. And they are set up so that the cruise company and the insurance company share risk. The insurance company is paying for things like travel medical and medical evac, coverage details, but a lot of the cancellation is covered by the cruise company because they're offering you, say, credit if you have to cancel early, or based on their cancellation policies on when they will give you a certain percentage of your deposits back. Those are the risks that are set up, they figure out in the plan. But there's some basic risks that are absolutely never in a plan that you get from the cruise company. For instance, bankruptcy coverage. Not a single cruise company's insurance is going to cover you if the cruise company goes bankrupt. The insurance companies leave that out because what they don't want is a situation where a huge book of business, thousands and thousands of travelers all sold through the same cruise company, and the cruise company goes out of business. Now the insurance company is on the hook. Whereas if you buy a retail plan from us, you can get the bankruptcy coverage because that risk is spread out over a very large number of people. They're not all traveling on a single cruise line. So if you buy a retail plan, you're typically going to get better coverage. You're going to have more cancellation reasons than were available for this traveler that you're talking about. You can insure all of your travel arrangements. So she could have insured even the section of the Orient that she was traveling between the cruises. It's going to cover you the bankruptcy. And the other big deal here is that if you're buying from the cruise company, you have no opportunity to comparison shop. But I get better coverage at a lower price? I can tell you that you can. You almost always can get better coverage at a better price if you buy a retail plan and do comparison shopping side by side on any retail site, particularly on tripinsurance.com. So we recommend people don't necessarily automatically check mark that you want the insurance from the cruise company. You can always contact your travel agency or even the cruise company and add that travel insurance later. And they'd be happy to include it as part of the deal. That will give you time to go online and do some comparison shopping. The other one is that we just had a client this week that I don't want to name the cruise company, but she came back and said the cruise company forced me to buy their insurance, but they wanted to buy some other coverage from us for the rest of their trip. And we looked at that and said, well, that's blatantly illegal on the part of the insurance company or on the part of the travel agency that booked the cruise for them. No one can ever force you to buy travel insurance. It's against the law to bundle travel insurance with a cruise product. It is against the law to provide a discount on the cruise or on the travel insurance if you buy them together. So no one can force you to buy their insurance. You are able to buy your insurance from anyone, and they can't force you to do that. So if you've got if you got a travel agent or you've got a cruise company agent on the phone who tells you that you have to get their coverage, you can say, yeah, no, I don't. Now, it is not illegal for them to require you to have coverage. And you can tell them, I'm going to get it from a third party, and then I'm happy to send you a copy of my certificate of coverage prior to departure. But otherwise, don't let them force it on you. Go ahead and do some comparison shopping. And always, as we're talking about this, make sure that you're insuring door to door.
And Dan, I know you already touched on this, but I just want to make sure we directly answer James's question, who sent this in to me. He said, if we're doing multiple legs, how do I make sure I'm covered door to door or the entire trip?
I would insure the entire trip, okay? And I would insure the entire trip from the day you depart to the day you get back home. You can handle multiple cruises. It's okay. You don't have to buy the insurance for a single cruise. You can bundle all of those cruises together. If something happens during the first cruise that forces you to cancel, The second cruise is covered under trip interruption, and they'll pay you for what you lose on the second cruise. So the smartest bet here is to ensure the dates for all of your travel, and then include only the costs that are subject to a cancellation penalty. So in this particular case, maybe the cruises have cancellation penalties and you want to include that in your trip cost. But if you've got, for instance, hotel that you can cancel within 48 hours between the two cruises, then I wouldn't include those charges because they're easy to cancel and you'll save yourself some money on the insurance. But you'll be covered for the full trip for all the travel, medical, and medical evac.
Dan, another excellent segment. Thank you so much. If someone has any other questions, where can they reach you or your staff?
Doug, send us an email at support@tripinsurance.com. We're happy to help you, particularly with these kinds of questions, even if you haven't bought the insurance from us. If you have a question on how to document for a claim, we're happy to help. And certainly happy to help you figure out the best insurance strategy for your next trip.
Very good. Dan Skilkin, president of tripinsurance.com. As always, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us.
Doug, thank you for having me on.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Madeline and her family took an 8-night sailing on Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas out of Galveston, Texas, and she joins us to chat all about it. How you doing, Madeline?
Oh, I'm doing great, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for offering to give this review of Harmony of the Seas for this 8-night cruise, which made it over to Perfect Day at Coco Cay, which is kind of rare for us sailing out of Galveston. So before we get to the ship itself, we'll take a step back. You're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to take this sailing?
Well, Doug, Perfect Day has been on our bucket list for a little while now. And like you said, it is pretty rare to find, not exceedingly rare, but it's not as common to get a sailing from Galveston to Perfect Day. And we would prefer to avoid flying. So we saw this sailing about a year and a half ago. We booked this last February with our travel agent, and it's been a year and a half of waiting, and we're just so excited to finally get over to Perfect Day. And this sailing was at the last week of May. It was just a great time for us in terms of school being out and kicking off the summer. And we get a lot of extreme heat here in Texas in the summer, and it hasn't quite set in yet. So this was a great sailing for us.
Yeah, I'm curious, with you booking it 18 months in advance, did you track the pricing? Did the pricing ever drop, or did it go up as you got closer to sail date?
We didn't track the pricing back as far as the dates were released because it really wasn't on our radar quite back then, like 2 years in advance. But we had recently found a new travel agent to work with, and we were just kind of taking a look and seeing what do you have in terms of Harmony of the Seas going to Perfect Day? We knew that itinerary is going out. What kind of group rates do you have? And so she found a really amazing deal for us. And we just went ahead and booked it, knowing that in a year and a half, we absolutely are going to want to still be doing that.
Absolutely. So from Dallas to Galveston, is that like a day's drive for y'all?
It can be, but we're extra cautious, so we do leave a day before. It's probably about a between 5 and 6 hour trip down there, depending on how much traffic you get, but we did leave the day before.
In any pre-cruise time in the Galveston area, the island or anything?
No, not really. We just booked a hotel kind of on the seawall there, just enjoyed the views and had a nice dinner at IHOP, our girls' favorite, and we just called it a little bit of an early night, knowing we'd have to still, get up a little bit early and get out to the port.
Okay, so you make it to the cruise terminal to embark Harmony of the Seas the following day. How was embarkation out there in Galveston for a mega ship, and how long did it take you to get from the curb to the ship?
Yeah, so it was pretty smooth, and it probably took about 30 minutes total, which amazingly enough, that's a little longer than we're used to, even on Harmony of the Seas. Our boarding time was 11. I think we got there around 10:30. And when we got inside the terminal, we were actually led to the waiting area to wait for just a few minutes while they called people by group. And they were actually calling people by their Crown and Anchor tier. So they were going from like gold to platinum to emerald. They were calling it like that. And that was pretty new to us. Normally we just can like walk right in. So we're a little spoiled to that. This was a bit new, but still a really good, smooth embarkation.
Has your family sailed an Oasis class ship before?
Our girls have not. My husband and I have.
Okay, so you walk on board Harmony of the Seas. What was the first impressions this go around? And I know it's really cool seeing it through your girls' eyes. So how was that?
Yeah, they absolutely loved it. You spill out right there into the promenade on Oasis class ships, and it's just beautiful. You see all of the shops and the restaurants there. Everyone is just greeting you very warmly. Nice smile on their face, and you just kind of want to stand there in the promenade and just take it all in, no matter how many times you've been on an Oasis class ship.
Certainly. So you make your way to your stateroom. What kind of stateroom did you book for this 8-night sailing, and what did you think of it throughout the cruise?
Yeah, so we actually booked 2 connecting ocean view rooms, and they were all the way at the forward of the ship. Like I said, we booked this through our travel agent, and they had an amazing group rate for it, so we just went for it, knowing that we've never booked this room type before or so far forward on the ship. But it actually ended up being a perfect choice for us.
That's awesome. And as far as space you had 2 rooms there with between 4 people, so plenty of space and for the amenities like plugs and your electronics and everything?
Yes. Harmony of the Seas is excellent in terms of the plugs and the outlets they have available there. You've got a good selection at the vanity. You've got a plug on the side of the bed. We were all set. And this space was really great. On those ocean view rooms all the way at the forward of the ship, it's got a nice little cubby right under the windows there. And we used that for luggage storage or just anything we kind of wanted to get out of the way so we didn't have to shove stuff under the bed or take up any other space in the room. It was great.
All right, let's talk about the food on Harmony of the Seas. We'll go up to the buffet area, the Windjammer Marketplace, they call it. How was the food throughout your sailing, and did it ever feel too crowded up there?
So we went to the Windjammer. I think we actually only ended up going there twice, and it was for lunch both times. And yes, it was crowded. We kind of course, went during lunch hours, so everyone's kind of there. But we didn't have a problem finding a table. The food selection was pretty good. I would say the quality was average. Our girls are picky eaters, so they definitely found some stuff that they were happy to eat, and that made us happy.
Is the buffet area on these Oasis class ships, is it set up like an island concept? You have meat carving, then salad, then maybe sides?
So they do have a couple of islands. They do have a long line with some of those, like the carving station you mentioned, that's going to be at the longer line, but there's a couple of islands in the middle there for salad. And I think there's like a soup station there, some fruits also, but also the desserts, they're not quite there right in the middle of like the main islands. They're a little bit off to the side where the drinks are, but it's a good flow. Like I said, it was crowded, but it wasn't like overwhelmingly crowded where we had to wait a long line or anything like that. Gotcha.
Now, outside of the Windjammer, any kind of like poolside grab and goes or anything on board Harmony?
Yeah. So the first day we ended up, we did go swimming the first day after embarking on the ship, and we went up to Mini Bites, which is basically, yeah, poolside grab and go. They had cheeseburgers, quesadillas, I think French fries, maybe hot dogs. I can't remember. And it was pretty average food. I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it didn't make us want to go back and do it again. But it was super easy and convenient and not having to go very far when you're swimming. Mm-hmm. So we appreciated the convenience anyway.
Yeah, certainly. Any specialty restaurants on this 8-night cruise?
Yeah, we actually went to 5 specialty restaurants.
And actually, before we get to those, I kind of skipped over the main dining room. Sounds like you may not have went there that much, but we'll talk about it anyway. What time dining did you have for the main dining room, and how was your experience in there when you did eat?
Yeah, so we did the early dining. It was a 5 p.m., and we did visit there about half of the time. And the wait staff were very, very nice, very accommodating, all of our requests. We knew that with this 8-night sailing, there were going to be some menus on certain nights that you wouldn't necessarily get on some of the shorter night sailings. So like, for example, there's a UK menu where they've got like chicken and mushroom pie, fish and chips, just some like really cool items to try, because we knew it probably wouldn't be anytime soon again that we would be able to try it. So we were pretty selective in which nights we would go to the MDR. I would say the food was average most nights, but above average on some others.
Speaking of planning, as far as your dining goes and the menus, you mentioned the UK menu. Did you do all your dining in advance, or did you wait until you got on the ship and you said, okay, night number 3 is this, we want to go here instead of there?
Well, I think my husband and I are planners, so we knew that we wanted to do some specialty dining. Originally, we booked a 3-night package, and we were just going to go to 3 different restaurants. But as time went on and as sales came out, we were like, oh, maybe we should add this on too. And we're not sure what's going to be in the MDR specific nights. They don't tell you too far in advance, but maybe like a month or 2 in advance, they'll tell you which nights are which. But here's the caveat. They can absolutely switch it. So like they ended up switching nights 6 and 7. So originally 6 was going to be the formal night where you have the lobster. And then the 7 was going to be the UK menu, but it ended up not mattering in the end because we did want to go to the MDR for both of those nights. But they can change the schedule on you.
Now let's talk about those 5 specialty restaurants you went to. So what was the first one? And give us maybe a highlight of the experience.
Okay, sure. So we went to 150 Central Park first. That was on formal night, which was night 2. And that was, the more elevated experience. My husband and I have been there before. We absolutely loved it. We wanted to take our girls because they actually have a pretty good kids menu, comparatively speaking, to some of the other restaurants. So it was absolutely fantastic. We got the beef tenderloin for 2. The Urban Garden martinis, they're our favorite. Our girls ended up getting steak, and I think they even had spaghetti. So it was a really, really good experience. We're glad that we were able to do that one. So that was night 2.
Nice. What was up next?
And then next, I think, I wish I could remember if it might have been Wonderland next.
Okay.
We did Wonderland, and that went over huge with our girls. They absolutely loved Wonderland. We were kind of on the fence about it because we just weren't sure if they would find enough there that they would enjoy eating. But we knew the experience alone would be super fun. You've got the Mad Hatter, that's the host of the restaurant, all dressed up and singing songs and making them laugh. And I can't believe how much cotton candy was on the menu, and their eyes just got as big as their plates at the presentation of the food. So I would say that was their favorite. It's super kid friendly.
Is Wonderland, I did it when the ship first came out. We're talking like 9 years ago, but how is it priced these days? Is it like you pay for the experience, or is it a la carte?
Well, you pay for the experience. It's like, they're really lenient with what they do give you. They will come at you with their favorites. They really won't even take your take your order. Basically, they'll just come and say, I'm going to bring you all of our biggest hits, all of our customer favorites. And so they'll just bring out one after the other. But if you want anything on the menu that they haven't brought, they'll absolutely give that to you too. We're not stingy at all in our experience.
Awesome. So after Wonderland, what was up next?
We did Izumi Sushi, and that was another risk taker because our girls don't like sushi. But again, the kids' menu had some items on there. We thought about doing the hibachi purely for the experience, but you do have to pay an additional charge on top of the cover you already have to pay. And so we were feeling, it might be a little bit limiting for them because you can't order off the Izumi Sushi menu, which has some other options like pot stickers. One of our daughters, she absolutely loves pot stickers. And so she got to eat them to her heart's content. And the ramen soup for kids, that went over really well with them too. They actually ended up loving edamame. I don't think I've ever tried edamame before, but they loved it. So that was a really, really great surprise.
Are the specialty restaurants priced different with kids? What is the cutoff age where they're paying an adult against paying a kid's price?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say it's 12. I want to say 12 and under get the kids pricing. Mm-hmm. And then 13 and up, you have to pay the adult pricing. But the kids pricing's definitely worth it because we were kind of faced with is it worth paying this dollar amount to get them to try Izumi Sushi? Because also it meant my husband and I could get our sushi fill because we absolutely love sushi. But it ended up being worth it even because we do enjoy tracking prices of these dining packages and the dining experiences that you can do. So we were able to get the best deals we could find.
And did you find that sushi on a ship is pretty fresh?
Yeah, it was totally satisfactory. It was actually above average. It was great. No complaints. I always get the sashimi, and it was excellent. And their rolls are delicious. The futomaki roll is huge, and it's so delicious. But everything was really up to par on Harmony.
Moving right along, where did you go next?
Chops was great. Our girls loved the macaroni and cheese, and that was another restaurant that they were really lenient with us and our girls about what they wanted to order, because some of the restaurants, they can be a little picky about, your kids can only order from the kids menu. They can't order anything from the adult side, but that was not the case at Chops. They were able to order a couple different things off the adult menu to try. And we sat outside at Chops in Central Park. It was so beautiful. They've got the lights on. It was breezy. It wasn't too hot. It was a really neat experience for them.
Yeah, Chops. Now, is that like the Royal Caribbean Steakhouse?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is their steakhouse.
Okay. And then how was the final restaurant?
And we did Jamie's, and we actually did that for lunch on our last day. We didn't do it for a dinner, but on our last day, they had a great price on Jamie's lunch. And we went there, and again, it was absolutely delicious. They let us try a couple of different entrees between me and my husband. And my daughter, she got the spaghetti bolognese. She cannot get enough spaghetti bolognese. And there's a few areas on the ship that serve spaghetti bolognese. Yeah. And they're all a little bit different from each other. So you're not getting the same thing at every restaurant. But it was absolutely delicious. I think I got the lasagna at Jamie's. Oh, that was fantastic. And the bread there, do not miss out on the bread at Jamie's.
Now, you mentioned that on the last day, they had a great price for it. So back to being a planner, was that something that you did in advance in your cruise planner, or was that a last minute thing once you're on board saying, hey, we have this marked down for a lunch at Jamie's?
Yeah, so we did it. For us, it was a little last minute. We booked it maybe 3 or 4 days before we got on the ship. Okay. And typically we already have all of our dining situated by then, but we got on the cruise planner and saw it was like 40% off. It was going to be like $55 for all four of us at Jamie's lunch. And I was like, oh, that's incredible. And I think they would really enjoy it. So we just went ahead and threw that in there.
Did you do room service at all?
We did. We did room service on port days for convenience.
And how was is Royal Caribbean charging, like if you did breakfast, is Royal Caribbean charging for breakfast for room service?
So it depends on what you order from the menu. For like continental breakfast, danishes, pastries, just coffee, basic things like that, no, they won't charge you for it. But if you want to order hot foods like bacon and eggs, then they will charge you. I think it's probably, I think it was like $11 if you wanted to do hot foods.
Gotcha. Let's jump over to entertainment. How did it stack up for this 8-nighter?
It was fantastic. Our girls loved every show we went to. And like I said, my husband and I have seen some of these before, but our girls just loved every single show we were able to attend.
That's good to hear. So let's unpack some of this. We'll start in the main theater and then we'll go out from there.
Yeah, sure. So the headlining show was Grease, and it was great, except we were pretty bummed, and this was no fault of theirs, but they ended up only giving us a musical production of Grease because one of the actors, I think, was sick. I don't think they were injured. I think they ended up being sick. And so he wasn't able to be in performing his role in the full showing of Grease. So it was supposed to be like a 90-minute Broadway show, but it ended up being closer to a 35 to 40-minute musical where they only sang the songs of Grease. So you don't have the storyline in there or a lot of the back and forth, but our girls did enjoy the songs, really catchy and great costumes. We had good seats, so we still found enjoyment out of that.
Any other shows in the main theater, or is it reserved just for production shows?
I think it's really just production shows. I do think there was maybe one or two adult comedy shows in there later. We did go to one, but it was not in the main theater.
Gotcha. And then how about on the back of the ship or the aft, the Aqua Show? How was that?
Yeah, so the Fine Line Aqua Show was absolutely fantastic. And we ended up seeing it twice, actually. It was so good. Our girls loved it. So we went on the second night, and we went and stood in the standby line because, you can make reservations beforehand. We had reservations on day 5, but we wanted to try and get in to see it on day 2. And we did, and we sat in the very first row, which, of course, you get absolutely soaking wet. And we were okay with that. We knew that's what was going to happen. But our girls loved it. The music was really exhilarating, and the acts and the performers will get right in your face if you're in the first row. It's really fun. Our girls absolutely loved it. And my husband took my eldest back for the second showing because she just loved it so much she wanted to go back again. And I will say they do not advertise this in the app, or if they do, it's very last minute. But there is a second Aqua Show that they will perform toward the end of the sailing. It's called Big Daddy's Hideaway Resort. And it's a completely different vibe, but it's only on like day 8. It's like the last day of the sailing, and they'll advertise it just like over the intercom. You kind of have to look out for it, but it's a completely different vibe. It's very animated and colorful. It has more of a storyline, like there's some bad guys that have robbed some money and they're trying to catch them. They've got some good cops in there, and it was just a really fun, whimsical performance. So keep an eye out for that one too.
Yeah, that's good to know. How about the ice show?
The ice show was fantastic. There's 2 different ice shows. So there was an ice skate ice show, which basically is a talent show for all of the skaters to kind of have some fun and dance to, not dance, but skate to some music that they want to skate to and show off some tricks and interact a little bit with the audience. And that was the first one we saw. And it was super awesome, really high energy. They did some amazing tricks, and our girls were totally engaged. And the second ice show was the more production one with fun costumes. It's called 1887, and that's more of like a French kind of ice skating show. Some props and costumes, and even some French songs in there. But we were able to get really good seats for that. We were like on the first row for 1887, and the skaters got so close to us and kind of interacted with the girls a little bit. It was fantastic. We were so glad to do that. And that was another show that originally they were going to be performing earlier in the cruise, but someone had gotten injured, so they had to cancel it, and they rescheduled it for later. It was the last night at 9:30, and so we barely made it because we were like, okay, we have to pack up everything so we can go to this ice show. But we managed it, and it was so worth it.
How about music around the ship that may have caught your ear, or any kind of parades down the promenade?
Yeah, we did go to. They had like a couple different parades. We did go to the first kind of, I don't even know what parade they call it. It's almost like a welcome aboard parade, but the costumes are more resemblance of holidays around the year. So there's like Happy New Year costumes and Valentine's costumes and just really fun, whimsical ones. Oh, the Halloween one. It was great. So the best place to sit for that definitely is in the promenade. You can be right there as they're walking by. You have to get there early though, because it's so crowded and people just know that it's going to get filled up. So you got to get there early and grab a seat in front of Sorrento's Pizza. That's the best place, I think.
Yeah, certainly. Not a bad place to be either. How was Sorrento's anyway?
Sorrento's was actually really good. And amazingly enough, even after all of the specialty dining and all of the meals, we still seem to make our way over to Sorrento's every night before bed, pretty much every night before bed. We really didn't have too much of a bedtime for our girls. We stayed up until maybe 11 or so every night, just going to shows and doing things we had on our schedule. And then we ended up at Sorrento's almost every night. Our main dining was 5:00. So yeah, it's like 6 hours later and they're saying, we're hungry. So where are you going to go? You're going to go to Sorrento's. It's like always open and it's easy and convenient and the lines are never too long. And great quality pizza. It was great.
Absolutely. How were the sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
Sea days were pretty good. We managed to fit in all of the activities our girls wanted to do, like the zip line, the flow rider, ice skating, mini golf, all those kinds of things. People were out and about doing those activities also, but we really didn't encounter too long of a line. The only long-ish line, I would say, is the flow rider, and it's only because each person has about 5 minutes or so to have a turn on the flow rider. So if you've got 5 people in front of you, you could be waiting like almost half an hour, I guess. But it was worth it. Our eldest loved it, and it was just on her bucket list to do. So we spent the time waiting for it.
As you're walking the lower levels of the ship, because that is where the casino is located on these big ones, how is the smoke situation in and around it? And is it ever bleeding into other spaces?
Around the casino, we couldn't really smell it. Couldn't really smell anything. And we did have to walk through the casino with our girls a few times just to get, it's on deck 4, just to get from one end to the other. And it wasn't absolutely terrible. I feel like maybe Royal Caribbean tries to cover it up with some like perfume or scented spray. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know. But every time we walked into there, it's like, okay, it smells like cigarette smoke, but it also smells like perfume in here. Right. So I'm not sure if they do something to try to remedy it, but it wasn't absolutely terrible. And you really could only smell it if you're walking through the casino.
So the ship leaves Galveston. You're heading towards your first port, which was what? And what did you do there?
First port of call was actually Perfect Day, and that was on day 4. And like I said, this was just on our bucket list and what we wanted to do for a while. And it lived up to all our expectations and just exceeded it. And we knew that we weren't going to be able to see everything there, even though we got off the ship early and we stayed until pretty much the very last minute. We still weren't able to do everything we wanted to do. But our favorite parts we did were South Beach, Oasis Lagoon Pool, and the splash pad.
Food is always subjective, so what did you think of it on Perfect Day?
You know, we were really, I guess, a little disappointed. It was just average for us, even though when the snack shacks opened, I think they opened at like 10:30 or 11. We were one of the first in line, but everything just kind of tasted a little bit dried out, and it really wasn't just everything that everyone's hyped it up to be. It was okay. Our girls were fine with it. We went to Snack Shack and we went to the buffet there. There was nothing spectacular. It was just okay for us, but that's okay. It really didn't diminish our visit.
Was there another ship in port with y'all?
It was Freedom of the Seas.
Okay. So you leave Perfect Day. Where was your next port?
It was Nassau, and that was the next day on day 5.
Gotcha. And how was Nassau?
You know, we didn't get to spend too much time looking around Nassau because we did book an excursion. We booked the Baja Bay Water Park excursion. And that was a really fantastic water park. However, it really cut into our entire time at Nassau, and we weren't able to really look around the port or anything like that. But not that we really would have been able to, because it was so crowded. I don't think I actually counted how many ships were in port that day, but it was a good few.
Baja Bay, is that on Paradise Island near the Atlantis?
We did see Atlantis kind of off in the distance, but this is a separate water park. And I think basically people will say that this Baja Bay water park is similar to Atlantis in some ways, but not as luxury, not as over the top, but maybe half the price.
Yeah.
But it was really well kept. We were really happy with it. Everything looked clean. Everything was in close proximity to each other. The only downer was this excursion we booked through Royal Caribbean. We had to wait outside to get on the bus for like an hour because we had to fill out waivers and things like that. And there were hundreds of us. It just took so long. I wish they could like have emailed that to us the night before or a few days before, whatever, to avoid all that time. So, but the water park itself was fantastic.
Sounds like you had a great time at Baja Bay, and then you leave and head to your next port of call, which was
Cozumel. And I think that was day 7, but we did not get off the ship. We opted to hang out on the ship and get our fill of the water slides and the pool and just enjoy a little bit less of a crowd.
Curious to gauge the temp on Cozumel as far as people getting off the ship or staying on. Did it feel busy when you were on the ship in Cozumel?
I really feel like it was, and I was surprised because Cozumel, it's just like a standard stop on any ship out of Galveston. And I was really surprised how many people actually got off. We got out to the pool and the slides kind of late morning, I'd say around 10 o'clock, but man, it was dead. It was just fantastic, and no lines for the slides, and they had one pool closed. So there's 3 on board Harmony, and they had one of them closed, but we still managed to have a great time in both of the other pools.
How integrated is the app during your whole cruise experience on Harmony?
Oh, it's fantastic. We use it all the time. Like I said, we're planners. So before we actually get on board, we have a pretty good idea of what our agenda is mostly every day, knowing that there's going to be some flexibility. We may just change our mind about things, but we definitely use the app to double check things and see if they've added anything. But we're not constantly checking it.
Yeah, gotcha. Fair enough. So you leave Cozumel and you're back in Galveston, correct?
Yeah, we had one sea day after Cozumel, and then we came back on day 9 after day 8. Yeah.
Okay, and how was that debark process?
It was a little bit messy this time. It's usually not so chaotic, but it was a little bit messy, and I really think it was just because there was some kind of delay at customs where they started debarking people, and then they shut the doors, and everyone just kind of had to stop for 30 minutes or so, I guess. And in that amount of time, oh my gosh, the lines to debark, it was crazy. You could not tell where they began or when they ended. And we ended up getting in a line that stretched around basically half of the jogging track. It was crazy. Wow. So I don't think it's normally like that. And other cruises, my husband and I had splurged on the Key VIP package, which grants you pretty much immediate debark access, but it was so expensive this cruise. We didn't do that. We just took our chances just doing it this way. But it was pretty messy, but our girls were patient and everyone around us was fine. It just took a little bit more time than we were anticipating.
You were cruising right before June. I'm not sure how the Texas school system works there, but were there a lot of kids on board?
There absolutely were. About us, our girls only ended up missing one day of school. So we left on the Friday that school was supposed to end. So they missed that one day, but there were a ton of kids on board, and that made Adventure Ocean extremely busy. But it was okay. I feel like all of the kids were really respectful. We didn't have any issues. You know, sometimes you run into kids who are just like rude on the elevator or just making some trouble, but didn't encounter that at all. Even though there were a lot of kids, it was fine.
Did your girls spend any time in Adventure Ocean?
They did. They went every sea day. So they did not go on the days that we were in port, but they did go every sea day. And there were a couple days they went like twice.
We always say it says a lot about the cruise line's kids program if the kids just want to keep going back or never want to leave. So what do they think of Camp Ocean?
They've been to Adventure Ocean on 2 other ships, but this is the first time they've been on like an Oasis class.
Any first-time tips you would like to share for someone either sailing Harmony of the Seas or that itinerary?
Yeah, so I would tell them try at least 1 or 2 specialty dining restaurants. It's worth the money if you want a nice elevated experience. None of them were disappointing to us. It's just a more elevated experience. I would say give that a try, and just also understand that this ship is huge. There is just way too much to do during your sailing. You will have to come back. But work in some downtime if you can. Really utilize the Adventure Ocean to either have that downtime or go on a date if you have kids. And check the schedule, because they will add things that you didn't see before. They'll change things around, and including menus and things like that. So just check it, update it every once in a while. And price check your cruise planner things too, because those prices will vary. You can find some really good deals on the dining packages right now, the beverage packages. We haven't seen such good deals on some of these Harmony ones in a little while. So price check. You can cancel your first booking and then rebuy it. You'll get refunded. It's always good to be aware.
Yeah, good to know. Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise for your family?
It had to be Perfect Day. We were all just so hyped up for it, and we were just so excited to go and spend every single minute we could there. We were just so impressed with the facility and how well everything was kept, and just beautiful, just really beautiful out there. The water park was incredible for them, and the beach was just beautiful.
In closing, your final thoughts of Harmony of the Seas.
Would absolutely recommend the ship. I would go on it again. We really love Oasis class. Our girls love it now too. We would absolutely sail on it again. No major complaints whatsoever. It was just the highlight of our year, really.
Madeline, thank you so much for sharing this 8-night sailing aboard Harmony. I sure appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Doug.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,